How you doing, everyone? I am broadcasting live. We are getting ready to do this next webinar. I'm excited for it. Of course, I'm excited for everything that we do, but I'm excited for this webinar to share with you how to lead your team, how to align your team without micromanaging them. We're just getting going here, but I'm excited to share with you. Normally, I don't do these webinars so late, but I know that there's a lot of folks in Australia, New Zealand, and Asia, and I really wanted to make sure that while we had the opportunity to share with you and that nobody was left out, and I'm just here to serve you. You can tell from my background here that it's late at night, but that's okay because, well, that's not, I don't care what time it is. I care what you guys need, and so that's why I'm here. It might be a really fun webinar. I mean, I'm going to have a great time in this webinar. I'm 100% certain of that. And I'm just really looking forward to having you have a great time in this webinar. Let's share my screen. Let's get this presentation up here. I have already done one big talk for 150 people today. So today is May 21st or May 22nd, depending on where you are. I did a huge presentation. It was awesome, and I'm just going to keep it going. And I'm just so committed to be able to help you folks. It's going to be small. It's going to be intimate. I've opened this up to YouTube in case anybody wants to join. I don't even know if I can put this on Facebook at the same time, but we'll figure it out. Just if I know that there's a couple people on, if you're on and you can hear me, just be sure to say hello in the chat box so I know who you are. That'd be great. You don't need to see who I am quite yet. Oh, I don't want to spoil it, you know. And if you're interested, we can actually have like a real intimate presentation. I'm totally okay for that. I sort of put this last minute-ish, because it's been like stewing on my brain, and I just think it's just such a valuable thing that we're trying to put together here. So I know we got a couple minutes till people log on, and I actually don't even know if you're in the chat box or if you're in the webinar. Let me know where you're from, and I can say hi to you individually. But just let me know where you are and what time in the world you are, because I didn't actually look up what time it is in Australia right now. Yeah. That's all I got. We're going to get going in a couple minutes. Should be able to see me here. Should be able to hear me. Can you hear me? Actually, that's a real thing I'd love for you to answer. If you can hear me, just say in the chat box, I can hear you, Anthony. You can slow down and stop talking. Because it'd be really awkward if I talked and nobody answered. And that's going to make it real hard for me. So. Okay, and get going about 2 minutes. Excellent. Yeah. Thanks, Scott. Good looking out. Like I said, we are going to have a smaller group tonight. What time is it? Scott, where are you in the world? What time is it for you? We got about 20 people registered, and I found that people in the, I don't know what hemisphere, other hemisphere it is, they don't, it's 8:30 p.m. Oh, you're on the West Coast. Great. Oh, fantastic. Excellent. Well, yeah, it's funny because every time I've tried to do this a couple times for the folks in Australia and New Zealand, and I don't know if it's like different there, but like there's such a lower percentage of attendance that show up. So either way, I'm here to share what I got to share, and I'm here to do it for you. So I'm just ready to rock whatever happens. Hopefully, I'm just not destroying the sharing right there. I'm just gonna check. What time is it? All right, cool. 9 a.m. So India is waking up. One of the things that I've really embraced, and it's 1:30 in the afternoon in Australia, so they're just finishing their afternoon, whatever they eat or drink, and they're getting ready to jump on. We'll just give it another minute or two before we go through. One of the things I'm really embracing, and I'm also streaming this live on YouTube if you're on YouTube as well. So one of the things that I found is really cool about this whole like world pandemic thing is that people have given up part of the air of trying to have it all together. And so I was like, all right, cool. Instead of trying to have it all together and making sure this is perfect, I'm just going to run it and we're going to do it because I'm doing it for you guys. So perfect. It's 8:31 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is going on YouTube. What's up, YouTube? We got about 6,000 subscribers on YouTube. So they're not going to show up in the chat, but that's okay. That's awesome. And then, of course, I'm just going to turn this off. I have my YouTube playing in the other background, so you can see how things aren't perfect all the time. All right, so let's go. So today, I'm first of all just so excited to be able to share with you. As I alluded, I was did a presentation to a group today, education professionals. There was 130 people on this webinar. So it's my second webinar live training of the day, and fortunately, one was in the morning, one was at nighttime. But even in that group, even not talking about strategic planning, we're talking about scenario planning. What came through is really everything is about alignment. So, why I wanted to do this webinar today is I'm starting to see different challenges in looking at strategic planning and organizational development in a different way. And so in our past webinars, if you've been to any of our webinars, we've had, we really go rich on the content in terms of process, in terms of structure. And today what I want to share with you is sort of a different way to think about how you might be approaching alignment and getting micromanaging your team. Because as I talk to leaders, we've been leading strategic planning sessions for 10 years. As I talk to leaders, I'm sort of seeing this trend is that it's hard to get people to buy into the strategy. And if you're on the chat, I'd love to hear from you. What is your experience getting people to buy into the strategy? But I'm finding that they're saying that it's like exhausting, like to try to get people to buy in, to try to get people to stay accountable to the plan, to try to get people to do it without like a high level of intervention takes a lot of energy and time. And so I'm here to share how you can get alignment without having to micromanage your team. So for those of you on the chat, whether you're on YouTube or on the webinar, just give me a yes if that's what you're here to do, and I'll jump into the presentation. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Anthony Taylor. I'm the managing partner and lead facilitator at SME Strategy. So we exist to help organizations create a clear vision of the future and a path to get there. I'm the host of the Strategy and Leadership podcast. Another reason why I wanted to do this webinar now is I just got to interview like 10 amazing, authors, speakers, thought leaders. And just like the same sort of theme undertone kept coming out. And I was like, wow, we need to like get this stuff out to people. And I wanted to do it sooner than the podcast. So that's the benefit you get of coming on the webinar. I facilitated, now it's well over 250 strategy sessions. And even through the commonalities of the strategic planning session, whether it's whatever the organization is, we worked all over the world, there's always sort of the same underlying thing. And what's sneaky about this underlying thing is you don't actually realize it's there. I've written a book called Alignment: How to Get Your People, Strategy, and Culture on the Same Page. And everything we do is about getting teams aligned. Making sure that everybody knows where we're going, how to get there, and to make your life easier as a manager and a leader. So as I was saying, worked across all sectors, all industries, or I say every probably, different sized organizations, big organizations, small organizations, nonprofits, for-profits, governments. And throughout all of it, the common theme is that leaders, people like you, are trying to figure out how you can move your teams forward, have a clear roadmap on how to move forward, and a path to accomplish the vision that you want to accomplish. And what's really cool is the clients that we've worked with over years, that they're starting to get that because it takes time. So Abdullah said, yes, it's very difficult to get the alignment. I get it. And the reason it's difficult to get the alignment, by the way, because it's a smaller group, I'm going to engage with you. So please, like, put yourself in the chat so I can be here for you. Actually, I will say, because it's a smaller group, and I say smaller because sometimes we do these webinars to like 200 people, I really want to make it that you get like the most value possible. So the more that you engage with the chat, the more I can like give you and have your time be valuable. Because I get that you're taking time away from your family, taking time away from work. So I just want to make sure that you get a lot out of it. So I'm here to answer your questions. And if you tell me here's what I'm dealing with, I'm here for you. And then I have my chat box here and then myself on here. But anyway, worked with organizations all over the world. And here's the top 3 mistakes that I see leaders make. And everything I'm going to talk about is tying it back into getting that alignment and not having to micromanage. So top 3 things. Number 1 is focusing on the what and not the why. Okay, focusing on the what and then not the why. And I'm going to go like deeper into that after. Number 2 is not having aligned expectations, or they don't use like an aligned language, a common language as an organization. And number 3 is they focus on the plan, but not the environment around the plan. So again, we help organizations, we create hundreds of strategic plans, and the strategic plan itself is great, but where it falls short are these 3 things. And these 3 things that come through are subtle, they're sneaky, and they're like a blind spot. Okay, so for those of you, obviously, if you drive, okay, when you're driving and then you look in your mirror, but there's something you can't see, that's your blind spot. These mistakes are often in leaders' blind spots. Whether they're young leaders, 25 to 30, they're running their own companies and they've been technically very successful, or if you're 40, 50, 60, 70, you've been leading teams for a long time, I see these mistakes all the time. And it's not necessarily that you're bad or good about how you're doing it. It's just I want you to think about, is there an opportunity to improve? One thing I make a joke when I lead strategy sessions is that my voice is weird and it sounds like I'm right. And I'm not right. I just want you to consider and to think to yourself, is it possible I'm doing some of the things that Anthony's talking about? And if I am doing them in any shape or form, or are some people on my team doing them, how is that impacting our ability to be successful? If you're leading an organization, which I assert that you are if you're on this webinar, and I've also seen all of your forms and seen what you've written, there's a lot at stake riding in your organization. Getting that alignment, not micromanaging, is a big thing. And so we're here to support that. So number 1, you focus on the what and not the why. Number 2, you don't have aligned expectations or use a common aligned language. And number 3 is focusing on the plan, but not the environment around the plan. And I'm going to talk about each one of those today. So I assert, if you're on this webinar, that you are tired of micromanaging your team. And the micromanaging team probably is something like you're in the weeds, you are putting out fires, you're herding cats, you're putting like so much energy into stuff that you feel like should be easier. And it's not, and you're doing a lot of work. So just in the chat box, let me know, is that the case for you? And again, if you're on YouTube, there's a chat box on the right. If you're in Zoom, let me know what your experience is of micromanaging a team. I'll give you like a quick minute to say, what's it like if you're micromanaging, or what's it like if you've ever had to micromanage? By the way, if you can't find the chat box, it's at the bottom of the Zoom panel. And if you're here, I know you can hear me. All right. So it is stressful. It takes a lot of time. It's exhausting. It takes you away from really having that big impact that you want to have within your team. So what would it be like for you if you didn't have to do that micromanagement, if you got that alignment, if you had to if you didn't have to micromanage, you didn't have to get in the weeds, you didn't have to keep people organized? What would it be like if they were bought into your plan and everybody was hitting their deliverables and their regular work? If you spent your time leading from the top and then managing in an organized way and not putting out fires? What would it be like for you if your employees were engaged and you're seeing measurable progress in your plan and your targets? You have your plan and you're actually hitting the goals that you have set out for yourself. What would that be like? And some of this might apply to you and some of this might apply to people in your organization. So I want to tell you a little bit about my strategy journey and how I got involved in strategic planning in the first place. So I used to run a lot of different businesses. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I had a lemonade stand. I used to put on rock concerts. I had an ESL school. I owned 2 coffee shops, and I had like 2 web startups. And what was really great about me is that I just really loved doing entrepreneurship. But I also found that in the process of leading teams and growing a business, that I took on so many activities. And I had that sort of shiny object entrepreneurship syndrome where I bounced from here and bounced to here. And I didn't get as much done as I wanted without a clear path on how to move forward. If I didn't have alignment with my team, then I wasn't able to get there. Now, concurrently, I would work on all of these organizations because I wanted to be able to give back, and I would volunteer on boards and I would work on committees, and I chaired a couple organizations. And what I found was I was in meetings all day with people that were well-intentioned, but everybody had a different idea of what success looked like. And especially in these nonprofit organizations that were well-intentioned, that had like a desire to have an impact, and their mission and purpose was to have an impact. But we spent so much time spinning our wheels as a group that we weren't able to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish. And then I discovered strategic planning. I discovered alignment. I discovered like leadership. And I basically spent my career, relatively young career, to help organizations be able to do that, and to create transformative change in organizations, to get teams aligned on where they want to go and creating the roadmap on how to get there. And then in our work coaching leaders and coaching CEOs and working with teams, it's about helping them think strategically instead of thinking operationally. So you think that you may have some people in your organization, or your organization itself might be stuck in like an operational trap. You're just so busy doing things that you don't have time to make progress. And then you're just busy, but at the end of the day, you don't know where the day went because you were being reactive to things instead of proactive. As a leader, you were in the trenches versus doing the high value activity things. So I'll ask you once again, does that resonate with you? I know that we have a different style and different types of different people on here, so might have different experience. So do you know what I talk about when I talk about that like operations trap? And that's the thing. It's not so much that it's like your fault as a leader. It's just that it's an exhausting place to be. And that's not where you're going to have the highest amount of engagement, because what it ultimately does is that operations trap costs you time and money. It costs engagement, employee engagement, and employee engagement is at like 30%. And you know how much it costs you to hire a new person. Okay. And it costs you actual progress on your goals because you're so busy doing stuff that you don't make progress. So you're spending a bunch of time, you're having people disengaged and quitting, and you're not hitting your goals. So you're not moving the organization forward. And that's why we were like, okay, well, what is the thing that's going to get in the way of that happening? And as I mentioned earlier, these mistakes are subtle and are going to undermine your ability to get alignment. So if we think of alignment has like ingredients to it, and it's not just one thing, because we've seen people with great plans that aren't successful. We see people with great teams that still have some challenges. And so I'm going to go through these things that are subtly undermining your ability to get alignment. So number one is focusing on the what and not the why. So this is the number one, when I say it's the number one mistake, is that when we come into organizations and we look at their strategic plans or we look at their strategies, it's a glorified list of to-dos. Okay, so everything that they have in terms of goals or strategic priorities is they have 10 priorities. They have a bunch of things that they're focused on, and they're keeping busy. They're spinning their wheels. They're missing why are we doing that in the first place? What does success look like in the future? How will we actually know if we get there? Because it's less important what keeps us busy. There's this great story that I like from Alice in Wonderland. It's a parable, and I use a lot of stories. There's a point in Alice in Wonderland where Alice gets to a fork in the road, and she asks the Cheshire Cat, she says, which road should I take? And then he says, well, where are you trying to get to? And then she says, well, I don't know. And then he says, well, then any road will get you there. And I find that so relevant for SMEs. I find that for many organizations. If they have no idea what success looks like, how are you ever going to get there? So the number one thing I find is missing is a clear vision. And not just a clear vision like we have in a vision statement, is like an aligned vision, that everyone has an idea of what success is, and that everybody agrees on what success is. So in the chat, I'm going to remember I said I would engage you. Has anybody ever had an experience trying to pick a restaurant for like 8 to 10 people? What's your experience with that? What's it like for you trying to pick a restaurant for like 8 to 10 people? Excellent. It's painful. You have too many opinions. It takes forever. I love it. That's it, right? Because everybody has an idea of what it looks like. And so that's what I would call like agreement. But what I want you to think about is that getting alignment doesn't necessarily mean you have to agree with everything. You just have to sort of be like, oh, okay, I can get behind that. But the thing is that you have to make sure that it's clear enough for everybody that's part of it. So if I say, who wants to go to Mexico? And assuming that there's no like travel bans, and I'm on the West Coast of Canada, so Mexico is like a cool, desirable place to go. I say, who wants to go to Mexico? And, everybody puts their hand up. I say, well, my version of Mexico is, sleeping on the beach and panhandling for money and just eating really basically, where you might have been envisioning a 5-star hotel sipping margaritas by the pool. And it's not that either one of those are invalid. It's that they're both Mexico. So we're both technically, in terms of if we had a vision statement, we'd both be going to the same place, but our expectations are way different. Said another way, if I want to lose weight, if I want to lose a pound, or if I want to lose 20 pounds, it's technically still losing weight. But different teams might have different expectations as to what it is. So why I say that is if you're in your organization, you say, hey, we want to grow the business, or we want to increase our membership, or we want to increase our outreach. What does that actually mean? And more importantly, why does that matter? What is the outcome? Where are we trying to get to? And so if you don't have alignment on why you're going there, then everybody is going to go to a different place. So you need to have vision alignment in terms of why that place is important and what it looks like, and less important around the how you're going to get there. And the other reason is mission and purpose. What is it that we exist to do as an organization, and why is that important? So your mission and vision and your goals all tie into the why, not just the how. And so the number one mistake I see organizations make is that they stay focused on the what and the how instead of the why. But once you can get to that why, once you get into that bigger picture, that's the thing that's going to pull you forward as a team. That's going to pull you forward as a group, because the benefit of the future is greater than the pain of change. As in, if you don't have a why that's big enough, everything that you're trying to do as a manager and as a leader is going to come with resistance, because it's change and people don't like change. If I ask, does anybody here like change? You'll probably say no, unless you're like a growth mindset kind of person. But the change is only impactful if it's big enough, so that if you get that big enough why, Then as a leader, you can focus on getting alignment towards accomplishing the why, and you'll get the buy-in from the team because they'll know what to do. When that vision is big enough, the why is big enough, then your team members will be called into action. They'll see what needs to be done, which will make it easier for them to actually execute it on. And if they don't have a clear picture of what success looks like, then you have to spend so much more of your time working with them, mentoring with them, supporting them, giving them action plans to do, because they have no idea what the why is, what the bigger picture is. So just to check in, is some of that resonating with you? Like the lack of vision, how a lack of vision would stop you from getting alignment? Because obviously if there's no alignment in the vision, there's no alignment at all. And then how a lack of vision would create like a greater state of micromanagement. Just put it in the chat to say yes, no. If you say no, that's totally cool. I just want to know where you're at. So the opportunity here for yourself is to look and say, hey, where on my leadership team, where in my organization do I not have an aligned vision? Where do I not have an aligned mission? Where do I not have aligned goals? And I bet you, I'll bet like a good amount of this is, I bet you $1 million actually, that most people in your organization are fundamentally wanting to go to the same place. It's just some of the details are different. And the opportunity is moving it from implied that we're going on the same place, to explicit, to say, what does your version of success look like? What does my version of success look like? What does their version of success look like? And then create one picture of what that is. And once you can get that one picture, and once you can get that clarity, you'll get the alignment and everybody will be bought in. But if everybody is running off of their own playbook, their own sort of where they want to go, then y'all are going in different directions. And that one thing is going to save you like tons of money, and it's going to jumpstart your company, because that's the number one thing we do with teams, is to get their leadership teams aligned on a common vision. I wasn't planning on sharing this, but have you ever been in the market for something, whether it's a new car or, you're trying to buy a thing, okay? It's typically like a car, and then when you are wanting to buy that thing, you see that car like all over the road. You're like, wow, I'm like surprised there's so many of that brand. Do you know what I'm talking about? Just give me a yes or no. It's like when you're thinking about buying something, it just like pops up everywhere. It's just like in your consciousness, it is in your brain, you see it everywhere. That's the power of a clear why, is that when you have that future and everybody has that thing, you start getting pulled towards it. And once everybody sees it, everybody in your organization sees it, that's when you start really getting that benefit. And so it's so much more than like a vision statement. It's really about making sure that every person in your organization understands where you're going and what success looks like. And you can imagine, if you're on this webinar, you are one person, what would it be like to the power of every single person in your organization knew why we were doing what we were doing? It's crazy, okay? So number one is focusing on the what and not the why. And if you don't have alignment throughout your entire organization in terms of why, you're going to have to micromanage people, because you have to keep reminding them. Mistake number two, not having aligned expectations or an aligned language. So I want to say this a slightly different way, is you have the vision, which is one of the ingredients, and the other is the common expectations within the organization as it relates to the structure. So that means what are the expectations of staff? Who is doing what? And actually, this one's a fun one, is have you ever had a plan? You might have created a strategic plan, you might have created a vision, and then you rolled it out to the team and you didn't know who was accountable for what strategic priority. And so it's like, oh yeah, like somebody will do it. But what ends up happening is nobody does it. It's because if you don't have aligned expectations in terms of who is leading what and where the buck stops, which is an expression or idiom, is that nothing is going to move, and there's no alignment in terms of who is doing what and when it has to be done. The other piece is an aligned language around important words, which means, vision, goals, actions, strategies, tactics, whatever you want to call them. It is how we're going to approach attacking the plan, how we're going to prioritize working on the plan. It's also identifying the risks within the plan. It's about all the sort of hard stuff, the tangible things within the strategic plan that you might be missing. Because I find people walk into a room, if they're going to do a planning session, they say, great, we've got our mission, we've got our priorities, and now we just have to go to work. But what they don't have is the expectation and understanding of who is doing what, when is it going to be done, and is it organized? Do we know the things that are going to get in the way before we move forward in the plan? Do we know what success looks like in each of those areas? And if you don't know what success looks like and you don't have any key measures of success tying into that bigger picture why, then as a manager, you're going to have to go back in and keep organizing people because they're going to do stuff a certain way and you have a different idea of what success looks like for that. You also need to have aligned expectations in terms of how the team is going to work together and how they're going to execute the plan. So one of the things you really want to think of is outside of vision mission, having a clear and structured process in terms of the foundation of the plan. So when we look at the strategic planning process, which we've talked about is in previous webinars, looking at what are we good at and what are we not good at as an organization? What are the opportunities that we have as an organization that we know some of them we're going to pursue and some of them we're not going to pursue? What are the things that are going to get in the way of our plan that we need to be aware of so that we can be proactive and reactive? What are I can't remember if I said this, what are the trends that are happening around us that we want to take advantage of? Who are our competitors? How do we position ourselves around there? What's our customer value? If you don't have a common understanding throughout the organization as to those clear, fundamental strategic planning pieces, then there's going to be an uncertainty and an unease around making decisions. And anytime there's an unease, or anytime there's not a system in place to sort of address any questions or concerns that come up, you as a leader have to sort of get out of your office and you pick up a phone call, do whatever, and answer that person's question. So the number one thing that you can do is set up the vision. So we're either going closer towards it or further away. And then what you then want to do is build a system in terms of risks, roadblocks, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities to help prioritize and help guide your people so that there's a system in place to guide the strategy. And if you don't have that, then what you're going to have to do is you're going to be taken away from all of the important high value things that you're doing that really need to move your team forward. And you're going to get focused in the weeds. You're going to have to focus on the operational things. Now, talking about the difference between the strategic and the operational and being reactive with your team, what are some of the sort of experiences for you? What does that feel like when you have to sort of go back and address the fundamental pieces of your strategy? It's obviously challenging. It takes time. It takes energy. It's frustrating. And the only reason is that you just haven't put the system in place, not necessarily to automate. And I'm not saying that this is going to take away from the actual managing, leading work that you need to do. But when you have clear expectations in terms of who's doing what and how the plan is going to be executed, and that includes a system for follow-up. One of the big things, if you want to improve your organization right now, if you want to improve your strategy execution, is have a system for reporting and talking about strategic stuff versus operational stuff. Because once people are put accountable for their work, and once that they know that there's going to be oversight and people are going to have to follow up with them, that's when they realize, oh man, like this thing is actually making a difference. You know, I don't know if you've done a plan or released a strategic plan or been in a new organization, and then you're sort of met with a general apathy, like, oh yeah, we tried strategic planning before. Oh yeah, we've done that before. Or we have a plan and it's sitting somewhere. It's that there was no follow through with it. There was no engagement with it. They didn't actually get the importance of it. And it's because whoever the leader was before, and maybe it was you, maybe it wasn't, is that if you didn't have that buy-in, and if you didn't have the expectation that it was going to be important, you didn't have the way to talk about it that was exciting, then there was no alignment because people didn't see what was in it for themselves. And then everybody had to sort of micromanage, and micromanaging is frustrating. It takes a bunch of energy, it takes you away from what you want to do, and it sucks your energy and time. And it's just not sustainable. So what I want you to take away from this, in addition to having, that clear vision, clear mission, clear goals, is that you got to put the structure in place within your plan so that everybody understands what's going on, why it's important, and to build in a structure of accountability and a language that you use that people can easily talk about the strategy, and the sort of space and freedom and time to really like get messy within it. But once you have those aligned expectations in terms of follow-up, in terms of checking in terms of measures of success, that's when you're going to start to see the transformation of everybody being engaged. The another analogy I use is, would you play a sport for very long, a competitive sport, if you didn't know what the scoreboard was? Probably not, because it would get frustrating. Well, there you go. There's that frustrating word again. And you'd quit. And that's basically how most plans are. People show up to work. They don't know how their work makes a difference. They feel like their work doesn't make a difference because there's no aligned expectations or aligned language. What happened one day might not be the same the next day. And so what they do is they don't do anything because they want to avoid risk. They'll do the bare minimum. They'll just stick with doing their job, not actually showing up and try to move your organization or your company forward. And by the way, this applies for profit and not for profit organizations. If you don't think this applies to volunteers, guess again. Volunteers are even more important to have this because they are volunteering because they want to have a purpose, which is the why. But they also want to know that if what they're doing is making a difference. And that's when having the aligned expectations. So you have sort of a benchmark in terms of what's important and the aligned language. So you're talking the same thing between a leader and somebody who's trying to execute the plan. Okay, hopefully that's resonating. I'm going to keep moving forward. So number 3, and this one is, I say they call it wild, but it's focusing on the plan, as in the hard stuff, without the soft stuff. And I had this a talk. I led a team last night. It's a coffee shop. They got 70 employees, coffee chain. And I asked them, I said, okay, great. Well, we have our vision. We know where we want to go. And we have our mission. We have our purpose. And I say, now I want you to think about the environment that your team is in. Okay. And I want you to look at the values and behaviors that you have within you can take the notes on this, by the way, if you want. I want you to think about the values and behaviors that you have now, good or bad. And I want you to look at the values and behaviors of the top 20% of your team. Okay, so like describe them. Describe your A players. If they had characteristics and you could like duplicate their characteristics, if you could bottle that secret sauce that they brought to the table, your A players, your top 20%. And actually, I'll check on the panel. Just to make sure, see if you guys are participating. When I say your top 20%, and when I ask you about their characteristics, does that make sense to you? Do you know what I'm talking about? Just give me a yes or a thumbs up or hands up, whatever works for you. Okay. Simon, you're the man. I appreciate you being here. And I said, imagine if you duplicated those A player characteristics throughout the entire organization. What would that be like? And they shared, it'd be exciting and it'd be awesome. Work would be fun. We would get so much more done. It would be like just enjoyable. And I said, great. And I said, would you accomplish your mission and your vision? Yeah, absolutely. I said, okay, now let's take the flip side. Imagine nobody in your organization had those characteristics. Imagine nobody had the characteristics of your A players. Nobody had the sort of desirable characteristic or the values that you wanted within your organization. What would that be like? Oh, it's terrible. It's hard. We would just quit, like, and worse. And I say, great. Would you accomplish your vision and mission? And I say, no. And I say, okay. And so it proves to my point, or at least I believe it proves, that the environment around the plan will actually help you accomplish the plan without even having a plan. You'll accomplish your vision alone with the environment, with the values and behaviors of your people, with the norms and psychological safety, with the ability to work together as a team and to communicate without like baggage that's carrying around, but actually a freedom to say what's going on, an ability to sort of question what's happening, to have like a rigor around decision making. You know, those are all of the things that I think good leaders do, because they understand that communication, that safety, that culture, that engagement is super important. And I'm not saying you're not a good leader if you don't have that. I'm just saying that what is important is to focus as much on the hard stuff as the soft stuff. Because we've seen people that carry around stuff that happened years ago. And then we have people that are in an organization that are so detrimental to the culture that they pull all the work behind, or they poo-poo on everything. You know, we had a client that we worked with, we've been doing their strategic plan for the past 4 years. And the first year we did the plan, really excited about the vision. And the vision pulled the 270 employees forward because they actually saw something bigger than themselves. Then in the second year, we focused on the culture. We really say, hey, we really want to make sure we get this culture. We really want to make sure that our employees are engaged, that they're communicating, that they're talking together, that there's no silos, that we're really collaborating. And it took 2 years within an organization to develop that culture. Like, it takes time. And last year, they had their most profitable year yet. And the manager was able to move from year one being a micromanager who spent all his time putting out fires to staying up top, staying engaged, and focusing on the highest value activities. And so you really got to recognize all of the things around the environment. We talk about culture, it's sort of like a bacterial culture. And this is way more than culture and values, by the way, but I'm just using this as an example. Bacterial culture, and like you think of like a petri dish. The petri dish is what they use to sort of grow microorganisms. And it's a bacterial culture. So is your workplace, is your organization a place where people are thriving so that they can accomplish the vision, so that they can communicate effectively, so that they can work as a team? And where I see a lot of people fail is that they'll have a document. Thanks, Simon. They'll have a document and they'll say, great, we have our plan. And then they'll try to execute the plan on top of a foundation of no communication, of frustration, of anxiety. And nothing moves forward, and they're sort of surprised why. And it's because there is not the environment to support that plan. So what I want you to like really think about is, as you sort of self-assess your organization, and we're getting ready to launch an organizational health clip, take a look at yourself and see, you know, are you a leader that is focused on the what and not the why? You know, are people in your team focused more on the operations piece than the big picture vision? And how does that contribute to your micromanagement? And how does that contribute to, if you have one, a lack of alignment? And then the second piece is around the aligned expectations in terms of execution, in terms of project planning, in terms of follow-up, in terms of accountability, aligned expectations around aligned expectations and aligned language. Do your people actually have a common understanding of who's doing what and when? And do they have a common understanding of how we speak around here and what important words mean? And if you have different interpretations of different words, then you're speaking a different language, which means you can't communicate. And if you're trying to execute on a plan, you're never going to be able to accomplish it. Which means that as a leader, you have to spend time managing those bridges in expectations, the work that's not being done. You have to deal with communication breakdowns, which takes you away from what you need to do. And you can't focus on the higher thing, which means you can't develop alignment. And the last piece is focusing on the plan itself, the document, but not the environment around the plan, around the culture, around the communication. So the actual act of talking, around the trust, around the openness, around the collaboration, on everything that you put in place to support the execution from a people side, from a human side. And, just on that note, for those of you that you have a strategic plan, or you might have had a plan before, and, it's May 2020, and I want you to consider that you actually have a new team. Now, you might have different people in different roles because of the pandemic, however you've been hit or affected by it. But I want you to consider that your people have new conditions of work. They might be working from home. They might have kids running around in the background. And so what I think this sort of COVID world is showing is that it's not just the work product, but it's actually the human behind the work product. And if you don't consider the human in the equation of what they're dealing with and how they're dealing with it, then you're going to lose them, because they're focused on their families and they're focused what's happening at home or with themselves. And they're not aligned to your plan. And then they might not be able to execute how you want, which means you then need to micromanage them. So I want to ask you, if you're on the webinar so far, would you like your team to be engaged with your plan without needing to micromanage them? And actually, I'll just ask, are these things resonating with you? Are you feeling like these are things that you can see in yourself or in other people within your organization? So here's what, I have an offer for you. We're a company, we support teams like this. And so my question is, if you'd like to work with us, what would it be like for you if you had your team aligned, engaged in your plan without needing to micromanage them? Would you like coaching on this? Would you like support with this? Would you want to work with us? Yeah, you'd be able to focus. Thank you. You'd be able to focus your time and energy in the right places. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, there's like the organization. You guys, if you get to know me, and so I should talk to you really, there's like the company piece of this. Like, you want your company to move forward, and especially if it's your company, like you want it to be successful. But at the end of the day, it's like your health and well-being. At the end of this, it's like your satisfaction. It's the satisfaction of your people. And how I look at this is like, if you're a good leader and you have the pieces in place, then you're happy. It means your employees are happy. It means your families are happy. And it means the community that you operate in are happy. And that's actually like creating a big impact around the world. But more than anything, if your team was aligned and engaged and you didn't have to micromanage them, then it would be an improvement in your life. And you would ultimately save time and money, have people stay, and you'd accomplish your goals. And that's the biggest thing that, why I want to share those big mistakes. There's things that you're doing, either knowingly or unknowingly, that are sabotaging your ability to get alignment and engagement. And those things are resulting in the fact that you have to micromanage. So if you find yourself micromanaging and you don't want to do that anymore, then I have an offer for you, an invitation for you. Okay. So what we're providing, and the reason I wanted to do this at like a different time zone, is to really just show that we can provide support for everybody around the world, which because we have, 10,000 readers around the world. We're going to be doing 8 weeks of live training where we're going to help you create a best practice strategic plan. We're going to help create your plan for you, and we're going to do it over the course of 8 weeks. So in video training like this. We're going to provide 4 weeks of coaching calls after the fact, support you with rolling the plan out with your team. So if you've never rolled out the plan with your team, you've never done a strategic plan launch, we're going to help you launch your strategic plan with your organization and coach you through it. We're going to give you lifetime access to all the recorded lessons and content. So everything you have, and you can access it whenever you want. and then access to all the documents, templates, and workbooks. So it's like a fill in the blanks system for creating your strategic plan. And we've done this with hundreds of organizations. And why we're releasing this now is because everybody basically has to create a new plan, and everybody has to realign their team. So you have to go through the process. You're going through the process, whether you know it or not. You have to go through the process. And so we're trying to make it accessible, affordable, and easy, so that you don't have to like suffer over time dealing with a team that won't engage and buy in. And so for us to do this would normally be $4,000. And that's like what it's worth for us to create a plan. We charge a lot more to do it in person, but of course, we can't do that. And so we're trying to make this accessible. But then as we looked at this, I'm like, okay, well, it's great. And I think there'd be more support that you could actually need, because what you need to do really is the plan itself, as I talked about, is so much more than just the document. So what we're going to do is monthly group coaching calls for the next 12 months. So this is actually longer than a year program, where we'll do minimum monthly coaching calls with you and other participants from around the world. And everybody's going to share their challenges with executing their plans and driving it forward, so that you actually have that support to getting the buy-in, getting the communication, putting those structures, and dealing with challenges as they come by. The other thing I'm going to offer is 2 personalized coaching calls to really make sure that your plan itself is supported and created in a way that's going to be able to support you in leading instead of in the operations trap. It's going to help you accomplish what you want to accomplish, and that you have personalized support from myself and my team to get you across the finish line and get that plan executed. Because what we need to do is get the momentum. And sometimes it feels like I don't even know what the next steps are. I don't even know what to do next. And so we're there to, if you get stuck, we're there to support you and answer that. So we do the 8 weeks of live training to create your strategic plan, which includes the vision, mission, values, action plans, goals, as well as the systems and structures you need to get your team engaged and aligned. 4 weekly coaching calls to support you with rolling out your plan, lifetime access to the content, document, templates, workbooks, everything you need to create this and other plans. We're going to do monthly group coaching calls for the next 12 months, and then 2 personalized coaching calls, really just to make sure that you get that one-on-one experience, the help that you need. Okay, and I was like, okay, and this is $8,500 worth of value. It's a crazy good deal, but everything in here is what's going to help you create your strategic plan. It's going to help you do it effectively. It's going to give you the roadmap. It's going to give you the steps. It's going to give you the documents, and then it's going to be done. You'll have the framework, and then it's just about however you edit it with yourself and get your team engaged. And then I thought to myself, well, if we do all these calls, well, what else are people going to need? Like, what if something comes up and I don't want you to wait for another month to just like wait to ask your question, because I don't want you to slow down your plan execution. So I'm providing 12 months of email support for our team, that you can send us a question, chat with us if you have something that you need. And that way you have on-demand access. You have like a personal coach to help you through the plan execution and being able to get across that line. So all of that is the 8 weeks of live training to create your plan, the 4 group coaching calls to support you and in a cohort, lifetime access to all the lessons, documents, and workbook, monthly group coaching calls for the next 12 months, 2 personalized coaching calls, and 12 months of email support. All of that for $9,497. By the way, that's USD, because we're operating in North America. And then I thought, okay, well, what else is there I could do? And I said, well, if these people need to roll this out with their teams, because that's one of the biggest thing I heard is that people don't get buy-in from their teams. I said, okay, what would help? And so, and I know this is 90-minute webinar. I don't know if it says 60 on the next slide, but it says 90, so I'll offer it at 90. Is a webinar training on your team, for your team, customized on Zoom to help you and them get bought into the strategy and to like get the inertia out of the way, to help you move forward. So there's really like nothing stopping you, nothing stopping your team. Everybody sees the value in moving forward on your plan. And this is a custom tool. I'm only going to do 5 of these because I don't want to give them away to a bunch of people because it takes me a bunch of time. But more than anything, I know it'll make a big difference for you in moving forward. So you get the 8 weeks of live coaching in the program, It's probably the only time we're going to do it live. 4 weeks of coaching calls, support you and saying, hey, what do I do here? What do I do here? Lifetime access to the lessons, documents, workbooks, monthly group coaching calls for 12 months to support you in the plan rollout, 2 personalized coaching calls in that time, 12 months of email support. You really have like 15 months of support to create and roll your plan out, to get alignment and to get you out of micromanaging, because that's the thing that is trapping you in this bottom part. Is we got to get you up here thinking strategically, thinking big picture, and pulling your team up. And it's going to take a year. And if it hasn't happened now, it's not going to happen. As in, you have probably gotten used to a certain way of leading, and it might be comfortable. You might be taking on like so much work right now, and you might even feel guilty for not working because there's so much to do. And it's like, well, if you don't interrupt that, if you don't change it, it's going to be like that forever. And then we'll also do a 60-minute custom webinar for your team. And it's a 60-minute. I said 90 on the first one. I really have to change that. But we'll do a 90-minute webinar, even though it's a 60. And so all of that, 1,100, 997. And because if you register today, it's 1,997. I hate the term COVID pricing. I really do. But I know that there's so many organizations out there that need this support, that need a plan. And like the plan and the environment and the structure and the system is the thing that's going to change the company forever. And I know that because we've seen it hundreds of times. Like it's a tool that anybody can use, but it needs to be done well. And if you don't have those little pieces throughout it, then your plan is missing. It's like a piece of an engine in a vehicle. You might have a motor, but if you don't have the oil and you don't have the gears, then the machine doesn't move. And so I really want to make sure that you have the support that you need, that you have the system, the structure, the process, and you're not just filling out a document online. You can get a free template from us, but it's not going to get you to where you need. You really need to make sure that it's done right. And what is the cost of not doing it? And even if all you got was a clear vision for your organization, even if that's the only thing you got, would it be worth $2,000? Even if all you got was just the clear vision as a team, everybody was aligned on that common vision, would it be worth it? So that's everything I have for you today. I'll answer any questions if you have some. I see there's one question in there. You can apply. You have to apply because I have to make sure that you're a good fit. So our team is going to interview you just to make sure you're fit, so that it's, that way you get the most value out of it. We don't want anybody in the program that's not going to get the value out of it. But the biggest thing that I would recommend, obviously we'll enroll in the program, but you really got to look to say, hey, where am I missing alignment in my team? Where am I missing alignment in the organization? And how is that alignment causing me to micromanage and have to focus in the trenches and working with my team at a deep level where I really want to be up here? I really want to have ease and joy and happiness in my work. What if your manager is the one micromanaging, and how do I get them on board to delegate and empower their team? That's the same thing. It's why do you think they're micromanaging? If your manager is micromanaging, it means that there's not the system structures in place to support them in leading. Now, that either means that culturally they're not a good fit, which is requiring them to micromanage, or that there's not the systems that give them the confidence and the peace of mind to take a step back. A lot of this is like psychological. Like if they don't have that space to say, oh, I actually trust my team. But you can't trust your team if you don't have the systems in place. You can't trust your team if you don't have explicit values and behaviors, because you have to keep interjecting. You have to keep jumping in. You have to keep checking in on them. So if you have a manager that's micromanaging, it's either not a good cultural fit for what your organization is, or there's just not a system. So that's everything I have for you today, folks. I hope that you enjoyed today's webinar. I hope you got value out of it. I hope it gave you something to think about as you look at the conditions within your organization, both from alignment in terms of vision and mission, alignment in terms of the language and the systems and the structure and the expectations you have in place, and an alignment around the environment. Is, do you have the right communication? Do you have the right trust? Do you have the right openness? Do you have the right values to support your team in being aligned and executing the plan without you having to micromanage them and get in the weeds with them? And if you don't, you're wasting time, money, energy every day. And so it's up to you. If you want to keep doing that, then please feel free. And if you want some coaching, if you want some support, if you want some guidance in making that happen, then we would love to have you in the program. And we'd love to be able to support you. So go to SMEstrategy.net, apply ASE program. We're going to change the name probably, but ACE program, Aligned Strategy Execution Program. It's going to be 15 months. If you are looking for support, if you're looking for guidance with your plan, we'd love to help you. If you have any questions, I'll answer. I got 4 more minutes. I'll answer one more question if you don't. Otherwise, I will turn us off here and end the day. So I want to thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar, and I look forward to sharing with you next time. Take care, everyone.